Hello everyone, welcome back to session 8. In this video, we'll discuss about promises. So what exactly are promises? In simple terms, they are objects that represent the eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation. Think of them as a way to say, hey, I'll get you the result, just hold on a bit. First, let's understand the syntactical details. First, let me quickly switch the window to the right. Let's close this now. Yeah. So now let's write a normal promise, right? So let's say I have a new promise called as PR, and promise is an object which in the constructor takes two parameters, uh, which is basically an executor function. Here also you can see that a promise takes an executor callback function, right? So what the executor function has is two parameters. One is resolve, that in itself is a function again, and reject. Both are functions, right? So what happens here is, let's say if I want to make an API call, right, the code corresponding to that call should go here. Right now I'm not doing that. Let me just make a data object, and if data exists, right, I want to call resolve, else I want to call reject with an error. Right now, to call this promise or resolve this promise, there's a method called as dot then. A dot then method is a method that gets executed whenever the promise is resolved, right? So let's say whenever the promise is going to get resolved, we saw that it is going to pass in data. So I'm just going to say console log this data, right? And by chance, if there was a failure, which means that the promise is going to get rejected, and whenever a promise is rejected, the dot catch method is executed on that promise, right? In this particular case also, let's write this console log error. Let me save this and let's run this promises window. Right now I'm seeing that the data is coming as data 1, and let's say if I had put it null, that means the it does not exist. It gave this error message. That's the basic concept around promises. Now let's take the previous code that we had, previous scenario that we had, and let's write some code to move that particular callback hell into a code that is more readable using promises, right? So we had a fetch data method which took a callback, and let's now rewrite this particular method to use a promise, right? So what I'll do is I'll comment everything after this so that we can quickly focus on that particular piece of code, right? Let's say the fetch data is there. Now what I needed from this fetch data is to return me a new promise, right? This time it does not require a callback because we are going to have resolve and reject methods. So that means that callback is going to get handled automatically, right? So resolve and reject, let's create a this, and in this particular piece of code, we'll just move this entire piece, right? And here, rather than calling callback, what I'll do is I'll call the resolve method, because right now my object is completed, right? My object is resolved. Now let's do this fetch data method. This is a promise. On top of this, I'm going to have a dot then method, which is going to take data one object, and let's just console it to log, and that's it. Right now I'm not using dot catch because I have not rejected that promise. But if you see here, now the data one object is coming. Now let's rewrite everything, whatever functions we had, with the same case that we did in the other scenario. I'll fast forward this so that you have already got the idea. Now I'm just going to rewrite everything with this same fashion. Okay, now I have rewritten everything. Now let's come to the actual execution. So first I'm going to call the fetch data method. On top of that, I'm going to have Once the fetch data is completed, I have a dot then method which gets executed, and what it is going to go and call is my process data with data1. Now, rather than doing dot then here, the promises chaining comes in. So I can just do a dot then after this, which will get executed once this promise is resolved, right? So now dot then on this, and the process data will call fetch data 2. Once that is done, it will call process data 2, and then finally once process data is done, it is going to call save data, and then I just want to log it to my console. And finally, to make sure that we are having an error handling done whenever any of these promises are rejected, I'll just add one catch statement which is going to give me an error, and that's it. If you see now, the output comes as data1. That is basically the top output that we had, and after this, the second output is basically the output corresponding to this statement, which is saved data1 processed plus data2 processed again, right? So now you can see the complete difference between what we had during the callback hell versus what we are having right now. So I'm able to understand clearly that what is happening, the fetch data is executing first, and then once it is completed, the process data is getting called. Then if it is, once process data is getting completed, the fetch data 2 is going to get called, and simultaneously this is going to happen. And at the end, if there is any failure or any of these promise gets rejected, I'm going to have a catch method which is going to console log this, right? Let's say in between process data of 2 failed, and let's say I just called reject here. Now you'll see the output coming as process data 2 only. So it executed till here, right? Data 1 processed again. Let's make it very clear by passing it in an error, right? So now you see it is printing error. That's it from this video. In the next video, we'll discuss about async await. Thanks for watching. See you in next video.